There are no free agents like your free agents. The Chiefs are in on the action pre-free agency coming up today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, friends and neighbors. We're brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. Go check that out at FanDuel. We have a lot. There's some winning, a lot of winning on the player side here, and some size of relief in Chiefs Kingdom. We're going to run down the wide receivers weekend. It was up and down. That's coming up later in the show. Trey Smith has news late Sunday night. We're going to break that for you here in a little bit, and we're going to start at the top with Nick Bolton coming back on a 3-year, $45 million deal, making him the third most guaranteed salary of any linebacker in this league. You might be shocked by that, but we're going to find out if Chris is. He runs KC Chiefs Corner. You've met him before. We've been doing the show for like 9 years now, so welcome back. You can get Chris's work over there. I'm at NFL33.com as well as RGRfootball.com, and just tonight, pre-orders went up for the Athletic Matrix at rogueapc.com. That's ROGUEAPC.com. And you can pre-order the Matrix right now, as well as the Draft Guide. That will be up for pre-order later in the week. We'd appreciate you guys checking us out, just like we appreciate you making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next one, because we have all kinds of content on all kinds of channels all the time. Check out the draft shows themselves. I think you'll be very, very happy when you do, because you'll know more about what's coming in May. If you want that much more information from us, get it on the text line at 816-357-8781. So, story of the day, and you can flip a coin through some of these as we get together on Sunday night here. I think it's Nick Bolton. It was going to be a challenge, I think, all along. Once Creed got his contract done, we discussed for a long time, could they get both Nick Bolton and Trey Smith back? Well, both of them made news on this Sunday, and it appears as though they will. This contract, 3 years, $45 million on an APY, puts him fourth in the league. The guarantee of 30 puts him second and ahead of Fred Warner. That's a pretty rich contract, more so than I had expected. Where does it land for you?
I think it's more than I expected him to get. Definitely didn't expect Kansas City to give him that. But the reality is we have to wait and see what the details are. 3 years, $30 million isn't that bad for Nick Bolton. And essentially, I think that's what it's going to end up coming down to. Is it's going to be a lot closer to 30 than it's going to be end up being 45. I would imagine that there's a very big number in the back end of the contract that's going to cause them to probably not pick it up. But a 3-year contract also makes a lot of sense for a guy like Nick Bolton, who was probably in a situation where he would be breaking down if he was on a 4 or 5 year deal. Mm-hmm. So he has now he has a chance to get a second contract here in a couple of years.
That was going to be my take as well. Like, for Nick, getting to the point where he can get back on the free agent market in a couple of years, whether it does go all the way through the 3-year contract or whether it's 2, which is probably my estimate as well. It allows him to go back and take another bite of the apple, which I think is key for a guy at his age, being what if he makes all 3, 28, right? Hitting that's well within the realm of getting another contract. For the Chiefs, it allows them to keep the heart and soul of their defense, a guy that is the extension of Steve Spagnuolo, onto the field, delivering the calls, aligning the fronts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But generally, we see this kind of contract level at the linebacker spot for the more athletic coverage type, do-it-all kind of thing. Nick isn't necessarily that, but I don't think you can run that defense, even the nickel defense, without Nick Bolton out there a lot of the time. And I think that was probably the driving factor towards making sure that you got him back under contract.
Yeah, and I'd be really curious to see what the structure of this contract is, because I kind of guess that his number for 2025 is going to be around $6 to $7 million. Obviously, that's going to depend on what his salary is. It's going to depend on what they brought him back as, what they gave him as a signing bonus. So I do think that that's going to be something to watch. If they get him under, $6 to $7 million a year, I think that's probably where you're going to want it to have him. And that would be my guess. We'll talk about Hollywood Brown later, and we'll talk about Trey Smith later, but I think that all those deals are going to have, somewhere in that $5 to $10 million range, year one contract numbers.
So how do you think that stacks up value against the rest of the league of what his play on the field represents versus this number versus other linebackers at the top of the echelon? Because this makes him an elite paid linebacker in this league.
It does make him an elite paid linebacker, and the key word is fully guaranteed. And I would imagine the guy that said it, in Adam Schefter, knows what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's fully injury guaranteed, that's a lot different than fully guaranteed. So, if it comes out being anything other than that's just full injury guarantee, that'll change my thought process on it a little bit. But he's getting paid top market money, and the reality is that this is basically the Chiefs saying that they don't feel like they can lose him. They don't feel like they have a replacement for him, and they don't feel like there is going to be a way to replace him on this roster. So to me, this means that they feel like he is their, I don't know if he's their leader on the defense. I would say he's pretty close. If he's not their leader on the defense, Chris Jones, I think, would be the other guy that you could throw out there in that regard. But this is going to be interesting because it's one piece in a domino of moves that have to happen. Trey Smith, which we'll talk about, Hollywood Brown we'll talk about. But the reason I bring all that up is because you also have, Trent McDuffie. You also have George Karlaftis. All of that has to play into how you're going to get these numbers together and try to figure out how you're going to build this roster going forward. And if you can keep those guys under contract long-term.
Yeah. I mean, there's fifth-year options on both those guys. So it does seem to me like this signals that they're going to have to move that down the line a little bit. But I agree with you.
That's kind of where I was going with that comment.
Yeah, and if it is backstacked, that makes things harder later. But I do agree with you. I think that this volume, this pay scale makes it clear that they don't feel that they can move on without him. And I don't think that's a slight against the other guys on the roster. But I do feel that he has such a command of it that Steve Spagnuolo is not comfortable without having him out there on the field for the next evolution that they're going to have to go through. And I would say that has to contain the run a little bit more. We've seen more run frequency in the league growing the last couple of years. And I do think the pendulum is swinging back towards being in base defense a little bit more often. And that, I think, puts the exclamation point on having to have your Mike backer be a guy that can run everything all the time. And they do feel they have that in Nick Bolton.
Yeah, and the big thing that he's always had issues with is dropping into coverage and getting back on defense and dropping back into zones on defense. And that's still going to continue to be a problem for Kansas City. So they're going to have to address that however they feel like they can, because he's not going to get better at that in the next 3 years. But this is a deal I was not expecting them to get this deal done because I didn't expect that they would be paying him what a free agent of his caliber would get on the open market. And I think that this is probably as close to what he would get on the open market as I would have guessed that he would get. Like, I was not expecting him to get $15 million a year, and I don't think it's going to come in at that. $10 million makes more sense, but until we see, like I said, the structure, somewhere in between 10 to 15 million, we'll have to figure out where that is once we get the numbers.
Yeah, and we will break that down for you later in the week when we do have that information. But as you said, it complicates the other matter. And the big thing that happened Sunday night, Trey Smith signs his franchise tag. That's a complication and an indication as well. That's coming up next. This is a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. Taxes are waiting, wondering, and worrying if you were going to get that money back. And then waiting, wondering, and worrying even more. Now, Taxes is matching with the TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert gives you their taxes their undivided attention as they work through your return so you can get real-time updates on their progress and you can focus on your day. An expert will find you every deduction possible from every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. All you have to do is do that to get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, wondering, or worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com, only available for TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. A lot of news, a lot of pre-free agency signings in Kansas City. If you want more information on what comes next, meaning the draft, go check out and pre-order the Athletic Matrix. It's the first evolution from Rogue APC this year, and the draft guide will be out as always as well. Now, there'll be guards in it. There'll be linebackers in it. But right now, the Chiefs have their right guard under contract. He signed his franchise tag tonight. So as of now, Trey Smith is the highest paid right guard in football at 23.402. And right now, he is going to play under that unless they get to the point that they can sign a new contract. What does the actual signing of the tag say to you at this point, the night before the legal tampering, quote unquote, before free agency really starts to kick up?
I'm really surprised, and I'm surprised because generally speaking, franchise tag players don't sign their franchise tag for weeks, if not months. The only thing that they can really do is hold out. At this point, he can't hold out anymore. So he's under contract regardless of what happens. If he is not able to get to a long-term deal, he is going to play under this deal. So I don't really know what to make of it. And it's weird because I would have thought that if they were going to sign him to a long-term deal, that would have been done before now. If they're, I still think that they're going to get one done. But the problem is like, now you're in a situation where you have to adjust Patrick's contract in the next couple of days. In the next week, you have to adjust his contract for whatever you're going to do. You're going to have to use Trey Smith's money, or you're going to have to use Patrick's money to pay for Trey Smith, which is fine. But now you're currently about $9 million over the salary cap, and that includes one person, but it doesn't include Nick Bolton. So, I mean, at that point, you're talking about still needing what, $15 million just to get salary cap compliant, and you don't have to be that until Wednesday when the new league year starts.
Right.
So it's interesting. And I know we're talking about Trey Smith, but this all plays into it. That now you're in a situation where you have the legal tampering period that kicks off, and about the time you'll be listening to this, or about the time this will go up, is when the legal tampering period will be kicking off. So when that happens, Kansas City can sign anybody. And then they can use the next couple of days to figure out what they're going to do with Mahomes' deal to try to figure out how much money they can bring forward. They can do the same with Chris Jones. So I do figure that that's going to play into all of this. But with Trey Smith signing the deal already, it tells me that he wanted to verify that he was going to get that money, and regardless. And I'm interested a little bit more because, like I said, you don't generally see players sign tags this quickly. So it almost makes me wonder if there was any kind of fear that they would rescind the tag.
That's where my head went to originally as well. I think this shifts the pressure back to the team because they can't pull that tag now. They can't say, hey, we ran out of money. We're going to let free agency clear and let everybody get their starting guards, and then we'll come back to you, and we'll cut it loose, and then we'll try to do a deal. So this puts, I think, the pressure on Brett Veach that, hey, I signed the thing. You're going to pay me $23 million unless you figure out how to meet me in the middle of where I want to be. And I don't know that it's adversarial. I don't mean to make it sound like that, but it is a little bit strange, the timing of it, the night before free agency effectively begins, that's when it gets signed. As you said, that's rare. And I do think right now, in terms of who's in the position that they need more from the other person, it is now the Chiefs front office that needs more from him to get him to agree to a deal so they can lower that cap number.
Yeah, but they don't need it for months. That's the thing that's crazy to me, because at this point, you're going to do whatever you're going to do. The team wasn't going to rescind it in the next couple of days. That's, to me, that wasn't going to be an issue. So the reality is you knew he was going to be playing under this, or he was going to be under this when you had to be salary cap compliant. So you already have that figured into what you got to do for the cap. So it's just the whole timing is weird to me, and it does make me wonder if there's any concern on his part that they were going to rescind it, because he's not getting paid. Like, he won't get this money. It's not like him signing it is going to get him a check. So he won't get the money for months. But at this point, they know that he's going to be under the franchise tag. The big thing is, and this is kind of what I mentioned with Nick Bolton, and this is what I'll also mention when we talk about Hollywood Brown in a minute, but 6 to 7 million is probably what his cap number is going to be. And eventually, when he gets a deal done, how much that's going to affect things going forward. I mean, if they get it down to 6 million, or if they, let's call it 7 million, that would be 16 million in cap savings. That's enough to do a lot of things. I mean, you can easily sign your draft class, which is going to be 3 or 4. You probably need 6 or 7, I would say, to probably operate and get your roster set for the regular season would be my guess. So I would say that is going to eat up a lot more of it, but that still gives you the amount, the numbers to deal with the other things that you have. So, and it's going to be interesting to see what they continue to do with Trey Smith and see what the guard market comes out to be in the next couple of days.
I completely agree with you. And I will say this, it lets you do a couple of things. What it didn't let you do is trade for DK Metcalf and then give him $30 million a year. So they weren't ever going to do that, but they did have some action on the wide receiver front. That's coming up next. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started. There's no better place to get into it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place your live bets throughout the game, start to finish. Even if you miss the opening tip-off or you want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can get there. You can stay in the action. And if you want to go looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into same-game parlay. You got to love that because it's a new aspect. You can just roll it into it. If you're backing your team for a late-game rally or picking up a player who just hit a 3 and you think he's getting really, really hot, you can do that in the app, and it makes it super easy. Right now, our new FanDuel customers are getting $150 in bonus bets if you first get a $5 bet that wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets right now. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL and the NBA. Now, I tease about DK Metcalf because a lot of fans wanted him in Kansas City, and just the nature of wide receiver contracts right now, $30 million a year for a guy who cannot either hand it to himself or run the ball in is crazy to me.
It gets worse, though, if you look at around the NFL. I mean, DK Metcalf getting $30 million is one thing. Cincinnati basically told Jamar Chase that they're going to give him they're going to make him one of the highest non-paid QBs in the NFL. And guess what? Myles Garrett just signed a deal for $40 million a year. Good luck with that.
Yeah, well done stalling out on that one. All of this leads us to the discussion about the Chiefs wide receivers. And the Chiefs got, I think, a good deal done. It has nothing to do with the kind of like glam numbers that we're talking about here. But you're going to have Hollywood Brown back. He's going to make a maximum of $11 million. It sounds like the base is right around 6.5. If I read it correctly, and you tell me, it's the same damn contract he was just on.
Essentially, yeah, it is. And the reality is and what I don't know is, and I have to look at the numbers specifically, but I'm guessing it's about $6.5 million in total that his cap number is going to be. And he's got some per game roster bonuses, which should be considered not likely to be earned for the most part, because I can't remember, did he play in 2 or 3 games at the end of the season? So the amount that would be considered likely to be earned would be what he played last year. Mm-hmm. So, and I don't think that they count postseason games in that because it's all regular season related. So, my guess is that you're looking at a situation where it's going to be mostly not likely to be earned incentives, and you have another $4 million in incentives on top of it, which they could lower the incentives that they gave him last year because he didn't play. So he's not going to hit, like, all that's going to be not likely to be earned stuff that won't hit the cap until 2026. If he hits it this year.
Right. It was 2 regular season games, 3 playoff games for a total of 5. What did he put up?
5 for number 5. There
right.
You go.
163 snaps. So, hey, I think it's a good deal. I think it's almost like a flashback in time. This is what the offense might look like had it looked like last year. You know, there will be the pending stuff with Rashee Rice. That might change.
He looks good,
right? But this would be the 3 that they had originally planned to go to war with last year, and they will have Xavier Worthy as part of that group, more seasoned, but yet he will be there. A lot of hubbub this week. Was arrested on a domestic for an hour. I don't know how long he was in there. Allegations were then declined. Bottom line is a history with a relationship that went sour, and prosecutors in the county, I can't remember which county it was in Texas, declined to even press charges. So
Which
Xavier
says
Worthy,
a lot.
exactly, and the speed with it was just handled as they declined.
That exactly.
It tells you that it is something going on, and he was not the aggressor. If there was any truth to him being the aggressor in the situation, I do believe they would have at least pursued more of an investigation and not turned it over in a couple of minutes. So I think we can rest assured that Xavier, at least for this thing, is out of the woods. And that eye roll that I had of, oh, here we go again on another wide receiver offseason, doesn't really look like that's what's happening.
No, and I, when you heard the news at first, I completely agree with you. I mean, I didn't do an eye roll. I just was like, oh man, come on. But it does sound like it's probably not going to be an issue. It's not good for him, obviously, and hopefully he gets that all taken care of and straightened out. But reality is that it shouldn't affect him on the football field. And based on the way things happened and the way things have gone, I can't imagine that if he was to have any kind of incident in the future, that it would even be related or even be taken into account because of how quickly it was cleared.
Not by authorities anyway. Now, for the fan base, the reason we bring it up is that it has been a tough go of late with off the field things, especially at this position group. So I do want to reiterate that this is at this point a non-issue for him and for this team. And let's hope that is a dodged bullet, so to speak, so they can get back on track with what their plan is.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, you look at there's videos out of Rashee Rice this weekend working out and getting after it. And so it looks like he's looking like he'll be in good shape for the regular season. He's already getting back in that kind of scenario, but obviously there's issues there still as well. So you're going to be dealing with that, but you will have, it looks like you'll have Hollywood Brown, you'll have Xavier Worthy. I'm still thinking that they're going to add another wide receiver in the draft at some point. Maybe it's not an early round receiver, but at this point, I still think that they're going to try to add another wide receiver to this roster and try to get
one in mind. I'll tell you.
I'm sure you probably do. You probably have several. The other thing we haven't talked about is, they also made some other moves with some of their restricted free agents. Brought back Caliendo, brought back Ariza. All that hits the salary cap and counts. Mm-hmm. So, when we start talking about their $9 million over, that should already be accounted for the most part. And they still have some other guys that could maybe come in before free agency kicks off. So we'll see how that goes. But it's moving. I'm really going to be interested to see what Kansas City does and who they're linked to, because I know we're talking about Chiefs and who they've signed. But maybe one of the biggest news that didn't include the Chiefs this weekend is Ronnie Stanley is no longer on the market. So any thoughts of giving him a contract are gone. And
absolutely.
Now it's a big question as to what you're going to do with the left tackle position. But it still was like you and I talked about it. It wasn't a good idea to give him. I wouldn't have given him $20 million a year.
I can't argue with you. And we discussed it left and right. And for them to do it, it shows desperation a little bit on their point because things are moving around. But tomorrow we will readdress the tackle in the situation, the options here. We're going to have rumors, I am sure, on day one of legal tampering. But right now, tonight, it is Morgan Moses that is rumored that the Chiefs are interested in, along with a couple of other teams. So just keep an eye out. This is going to be a roller coaster this week, folks. It's going to change.
Yeah, well, and it's going to be really curious to find out, and we won't know until probably Wednesday, Thursday, what they're going to do with Mahomes' contract. But if they go out and they swing a big deal with a free agent tackle, you have to wonder what they're going to do and how much they're going to move around on Mahomes' deal. $66 million isn't going to stick for Mahomes this year.
No, not even close. We will break that down and more tomorrow. Do not miss it. Wednesday, Matt Derrick will be back with us, give us the insight as he's hearing it as well. And then we'll continue moving forward as free agency starts to pick up, and we'll see where the Chiefs get interested. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next one right now, and make sure that you like, sub, and hit that bell. Become part of the Locked On Chiefs family. We appreciate you, especially you locos, you everyday listeners. Have a great one, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.